In the shadow of the Carpathian Mountains, there was a desolate train station known as Varnova. It hadn't seen a train in decades, yet a single red light above the tracks remained perpetually illuminated, casting an eerie glow over the cracked pavement. Locals whispered that the station came alive on nights when the fog was thick, and the moon shone faintly through the mist. Arion, a wanderer with no home and no future, found himself drawn to the station one such night. The air was unnaturally cold, and the faint sound of a violin echoed from the platform. His instincts screamed at him to leave, but hunger and curiosity kept him rooted. As the fog thickened, the shriek of an oncoming train broke the silence. To his disbelief, a sleek black locomotive emerged from the haze, its windows glowing a sinister crimson. The train halted with a deafening screech, and a man stepped out, a tall figure cloaked in a long black coat, his face pale and angular, with eyes as sharp and deep as a night sky void of stars. The man's voice was like velvet and steel, smooth but commanding. "You've come to ride, haven't you?" Arion, unsure if he was dreaming, nodded. The man extended a gloved hand. "One ticket for passage. The cost is small." A strange compulsion overtook him, and Arion handed over a silver coin from his pocket, one he'd never remembered owning. The man smiled, revealing teeth that glinted like polished ivory. "Board, and discover what lies beyond." Arion stepped into the train, the interior impossibly grand. With crimson velvet seats and gold fixtures, passengers lined the aisles, but something about them was off. Their faces were too still, too pale, as if carved from marble. None turned to look at him, yet their presence felt suffocating. The train jerked to life, and the windows outside showed not the world he knew but a swirling, blood-red void. Panic clawed at Arion's chest, but the conductor's voice rang out. "Do not fear, traveler. This is merely the passage. The destination is what matters." Arion sat, heart racing, as the train sped through the void. The violin music grew louder, more haunting, until he realized it wasn't coming from a player but from the very walls of the train. Finally, the train slowed, and outside, Arion saw a city bathed in perpetual twilight. Towering spires stretched into the heavens, and the streets below teemed with shadows moving unnaturally fast. The passengers began to disembark, their faces morphing into expressions of hunger and malice. The conductor turned to Arion, his smile now predatory. "This is your new home. You are one of us now. Do you not feel it? The hunger?" Arion's reflection in the window revealed what he dreaded most, his eyes glowing crimson, his teeth elongated into fangs. He tried to scream, but only a guttural growl escaped his throat. The conductor's laugh echoed as the train vanished into the void, leaving only the crimson light of Varnova station behind. What happens next? Does Arion embrace his new nature, or does he resist the monstrous hunger threatening to consume him? The crimson light remains, waiting for the next unwitting soul. Arion staggered off the train, his legs trembling as he stepped onto the cobbled streets of the strange city. The air was thick with a metallic tang, and the shadows that moved unnaturally fast now circled him, like predators testing their prey. The conductor remained behind him, his voice smooth yet laden with finality. "You cannot go back, Arion, but you can choose your place here. Will you feast, or fall?" Arion turned to confront him, but the train was gone, leaving only empty tracks that faded into the crimson-hued mist. He looked around and realized the shadows circling him were the passengers from the train, their pale faces now twisted with ravenous glee. One of them stepped forward, a woman with hair flowing like black silk and eyes as bright and menacing as the conductor's. She reached out, her long fingers brushing Arion's arm. "New blood," she whispered, her voice as cold as the air. "The first hunger is the hardest." Arion's throat burned with an ache he couldn't comprehend. It was as if his entire body cried out for something he couldn't name but instinctively knew. His vision blurred, sharpening only when he focused on the woman's neck. The pulse there thrummed in his ears, loud and intoxicating. "No," he gasped, staggering back. "I won't." The woman laughed, a sound that echoed through the streets. "They all say that." Before he could move, she was upon him, her grip like iron. Her lips curled into a snarl, but before she could strike, another figure emerged from the shadows. "Enough, Celine," the new voice commanded. low and edged with authority. A man stepped into the dim light, his presence like a storm about to break. He was tall, his long coat swaying as if carried by a wind that didn't exist. His face was scarred, and his crimson eyes burned with a fierce intensity. Selene hesitated, her grip loosening. "He's ours, Draven. You have no claim." Draven's gaze flicked to Arion, and for a moment, something almost human softened his expression. "He's not ready. You'll ruin him." Selene hissed, but she released Arion, who crumpled to the ground. The other passengers receded, their laughter fading into the distance as they dissolved into the shadows once more. Draven knelt beside Arion, his voice quieter now. "You don't understand what you've been given, but you will. The hunger never leaves, but if you let it consume you too quickly, you'll lose yourself." Arion stared at him, trembling. What am I? What is this place?" Draven straightened, his gaze shifting to the cityscape around them. "This is Duskmere, a place between life and death. And you, like us, are cursed to walk it forever. But not all of us are monsters, Arion. Some of us fight it." Arion's breath hitched. "Fight it? How?" Draven's expression darkened. "That's what you must decide. But you'll need allies if you're to survive. The conductor isn't just ferrying passengers, he's building an army. And if you're not careful, you'll be one of his pawns." As Draven spoke, the faint sound of the violin rose again, distant but menacing. Arion turned to see the crimson glow of the train's light on the horizon, inching closer. "You have little time," Draven said, his voice urgent. "Choose now, or join me. But whatever you do, don't board that train again." Arion's eyes darted between Draven and the approaching light. The hunger clawed at him, and the city seemed to shift, its streets warping as if alive. He had no idea whom to trust or if trust was even possible here. The choice loomed before him, and the crimson light crept closer, bathing everything in its terrible glow. Will Arion resist the hunger and follow Draven, or will he succumb to the train's call, joining the conductor's army? The violin's haunting melody holds the answer. Waiting for the next chapter, Arion stood frozen as the crimson glow of the train's light intensified, the haunting melody weaving itself into his thoughts like a siren's call. Draven's eyes bore into him, sharp and unyielding, yet laced with something unexpected desperation. "Decide," Draven urged, his voice cutting through the rising hum of the train. "Once that train stops, it won't wait. If you hesitate, you're lost." Arion felt the ache in his throat deepen, the hunger gnawing at the edges of his resolve. His instincts screamed at him to run, to escape, but the train's pull was magnetic, promising answers, power, perhaps even relief from the torment consuming him. "I don't even know you," Arion spat, his voice hoarse. "Why should I trust you?" Draven's expression hardened. "Because I've walked this path longer than you can imagine, and I've seen what happens to those who board that train." He paused, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "The conductor doesn't offer salvation. He offers slavery. You'll become a shadow of yourself, feeding his endless war." "War?" Arion echoed, his heart pounding. Draven didn't answer, his gaze shifting toward the tracks. The train's horn blared, a low, mournful sound that seemed to rattle the very air. The mist thickened, and figures began to emerge from the shadows. Passengers who had once disembarked now returned, their faces even more hollow, their eyes glowing like embers. "Arion." Selene's voice drifted from somewhere behind him, softer now, almost tender. "You don't have to fight. Come with us. The hunger will ease, the pain will end." Arion turned, finding her standing just beyond the mist. Her beauty was otherworldly, her movements fluid and inviting. Yet her smile was edged with something sinister. "Enough," Draven barked, stepping between them. "Selene, go back to your shadows. He's not yours to take." Selene's expression darkened, her crimson eyes narrowing. "You can't save them all, Draven. He'll come to us eventually. They always do." She dissolved into the mist, her laughter echoing like a ghostly chorus. Draven grabbed Arion's arm, his grip firm. "Time's up. Decide now, fight or fall. But if you stay here..." He glanced toward the approaching train, the conductor's silhouette now visible in the swirling fog. "You'll never be free." Arion's mind raced. The hunger was unbearable, a constant torment that Selene's promises seemed to soothe. Yet Draven's warning rang true, the urgency in his voice cutting through the haze. The train screeched to a halt, its doors hissing open. The conductor stepped onto the platform, his pale face twisted into a smile that didn't reach his predatory eyes. He extended a gloved hand toward Arion. "Your time has come," the conductor said, his voice silky and commanding. "Step aboard, and claim your place among the chosen." Arion's feet moved on their own, drawn to the train's crimson glow. Draven called out, his voice distant and drowned beneath the rising hum of the violin. As Arion reached the door, he hesitated, glancing back at Draven. The older vampire stood motionless, his scarred face a mask of grim resolve. "Whatever you choose," Draven said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Remember this, your soul is your own, but only if you fight for it." Arion's hand hovered above the train's railing. The hunger screamed for release, the conductor's gaze bore into him, and the mist seemed to close in, suffocating and cold. The choice was his, but every path led deeper into the unknown. Did Arion board the train, or did he pull away at the last second? The conductor's smile lingered, his promise heavy in the air. Somewhere in the shadows, Selene watched, and in the distance, the violin played on. Arion's trembling hand grasped the train's railing. The conductor's smile widened, and a ripple of satisfaction passed through the gathered shadows. Behind him, Draven's voice cut through the thick, oppressive air. "Arion, don't this isn't salvation. It's damnation." But the hunger was too strong, an insatiable beast clawing at Arion's very essence. His throat burned, his vision blurred, and the train's crimson glow seemed to promise release from the torment. Without another word, he stepped onto the platform. The doors hissed shut behind him, sealing his fate. Inside, the train felt alive, the walls pulsing faintly with an otherworldly rhythm. The crimson light bathed everything in a sickly glow, and the passengers silent. Hollow-eyed wraiths turned to stare at him. Their gazes were cold and lifeless, yet full of anticipation, as though they were welcoming a new member into their ranks. Arion sank into a seat, the velvet fabric warm and damp beneath his touch. The hunger subsided, replaced by a heavy numbness that spread through his limbs. He looked down at his hands, now pale and translucent, veins darkening like creeping vines. "You've chosen wisely," the conductor said, appearing beside him. His voice was low, almost gentle, but it carried the weight of finality. "The pain will fade soon, and then you will understand your purpose." "What purpose?" Arion managed to whisper, though his voice felt distant, as if it no longer belonged to him. The conductor leaned closer, his breath cold as winter's frost. "To serve, to hunt, to bring others into the fold. The war is eternal, and now, so are you." The train jolted to life, and the windows darkened, revealing a shifting landscape of writhing shadows and fractured crimson light. The passengers began to move, their forms twisting and merging with the train itself, their features dissolving into the pulsating walls. Arion tried to stand, to scream, to fight, but his body refused to obey. The numbness consumed him, and his reflection in the glass revealed the truth. His face was no longer his own. His eyes glowed red, his features hollow and contorted, like the other passengers. Draven's warning echoed in his fading mind. "You'll never be free." The train hurtled forward into the endless void, the haunting violin playing louder and louder, drowning out the last remnants of Arion's humanity. Outside the station, the crimson light remained, waiting for its next victim. And deep within the train, Arion became just another shadow, lost forever in the conductor's eternal war. The crimson conductor smiled as the train roared through the abyss, his army growing with every stop.